Some weapons are only found in the hands of those who are privileged. They are divine weapons. These weapons are the materialization of a person's soul. Thanks to this, these pieces of equipment are endowed with unique abilities. A noble family once defeated the evil god, the Catastrophe Duchy. From birth, its members have everything: bodies built for combat, exceptional talent for battle, and divine weapons that are truly incredible. The protagonist was born into this family and dreams of becoming a great hero one day, proudly wielding the divine weapons he possesses. At least, that's how it should have been. But during the oracle ceremony, one's divine weapon manifests. He ended up discovering that he wouldn't have one. It was the first time in the history of his family that this had happened, making him the first great failure. Because of this, he was considered inferior and suffered constant humiliation, being called a public embarrassment. The family's second son, Zane, was naturally unsympathetic. To him, useless people like the protagonists, who failed to attain a divine weapon, did not belong in that place. He used this as an excuse to massage the protagonist's face in an unintentional manner, performing temporary facial harmonization sessions on him. Jessica and Sarah also watched, doing nothing. Jessica, in particular, seemed to enjoy the humiliation sessions. Sarah, on the other hand, did not like what was happening. She tried to intervene in some way, attempting to stop it. But Jessica made her trip and fall to the ground. She did this because Sarah had been called there to observe, to witness what happens to those who are weak and have no future. She was not supposed to intervene. Seeing Jessica step on his friend's head made him worried. But he was in the middle of an involuntary massage session and was reminded of that. His aggressor said that filthy hybrids are too attached to each other. While beating the protagonist, he continued to insult him with words. They were children of concubines, so they were constantly humiliated by the others being called mutts. After being beaten, he apologized for not being able to protect Sarah, as he was too weak. With a big smile on her face, the girl told him not to worry, as she had promised to always stand by his side. But the boy did not want to remain in this situation. He told her that he would become stronger and stronger, even if he did not possess a divine weapon. He also promised that he would protect her with his own life. After embracing each other, she thanked him for making that promise. Yet he was unable to live up to that promise, because just a few days later, he was banished from the family. He immediately began to grieve, overwhelmed by rage. Because he knew that she would be persecuted, he needed to become strong enough to take her out of that place. Mastering skills with a normal weapon was useless against a knight with a divine weapon, so he had to become even stronger. In truth, he had no other option available. He placed a bag full of money on the counter of that shop. Showing the gold coins, he said he would take one weapon of each type. An unusual request. The shopkeeper thought the boy was about to start a personal war. 2 years had passed since he had been exiled from his family. Riding a horse, he continued his journey. The boy had learned a few things, but he still did not have a divine weapon. Before him stood several enemies, dangerous monsters. He had many weapons to use against them. He was also eager to finally begin the fight, because he had mastered all of them, becoming formidable. He even had a firearm, ideal for collecting debts from delinquent borrowers. There was nothing the creatures could do against him. At the end of the battle, a hooded man seemed to be watching everything, until he finally decided to speak to the boy. He wanted to know if that boy always carried all those weapons, and if this was the concern of someone who had failed to obtain a divine weapon. He had already forgotten about the trap he had set, and was looking for someone he could trust. Someone with enough potential to eventually become a great hero. The protagonist could only have one impression of this mysterious figure, as conversations seemed like the ramblings of a madman. But an intense blue glow appeared in the man's hand, firing a bolt of energy toward the boy. A shining object was in front of him. It looked like a weapon, leaving the protagonist genuinely impressed by what was happening. The man said he would trust the boy, leaving that weapon with him. Still embedded in the ground, the object glowed while releasing energy. He thought it might be a sword and started to approach it until he finally touched it with his hand, only to realize that what he had received was just the sword's scabbard. The Divine Sheath of Avalon, an item that allows its user to store their divine weapon and pass it on to another person. Passed down from generation to generation, it now holds the weapons of those who are the 5 greatest in history. Whoever is able to wield it will have the best armaments on the planet. The boy's determination is focused on achieving complete mastery of that item. Since that event, 3 years had passed, he was with his mentor and a dragon soared across the sky. The creature charged at them, furious. It had prepared its flames ready to annihilate all living beings from the face of the earth. But that heat was not a concern for the protagonist, who remained unimpressed. He immediately invoked Avalon, and the white sheath appeared in his hand. He held it as if he were about to unsheath the sword. Focusing, he commanded the power to manifest. Then, an intense glow appeared on the sacred item, and in the boy's hand, another glow emerged. Until in his grasp, the windshield of Achilles took form, powerful enough to generate an effective protective barrier against the dragon's attack. To counterattack, he invoked the Stormhammer Mjolnir. He was properly positioned to annihilate the creature, leaping onto the dragon with the hammer ready to deliver a massive blow. The strike was powerful and crushing, slamming the creature's head into the ground. A single hit was enough. His mentor declared that he had mastered Avalon. He told him that he could now go to his sister, as not even an S-rank paladin would be able to stop him. Hearing these words, hope filled the protagonist's eyes. With great joy, he said he would do as instructed. 5 years had passed since he was banished, and now he had more than enough power to rescue his sister. As he advanced, he hoped that Sarah was safe, because he was on his way to her to rescue her from that despicable place. However, upon reaching the region, he saw that fire had consumed everything. He did not know what could have happened, and immediately became very worried. Amidst the flames, he saw several banners raised. He quickly recognized those symbols. They belonged to another duchy, the Rothwindsor. A fierce battle was underway, a civil war. This was definitely not good. He rushed into the castle, desperately searching for his sister, approaching a massive gate that was already slightly open. But upon entering the hall, he was met with a heartbreaking scene. A severely wounded body lay on the ground. It couldn't be possible that this had happened. That was the body of his dear sister. He took her into his arms. Deeply concerned, the girl showed no reaction. It was possible that the worst had already come to pass. He remembered the words he had spoken to her, and the promise he had failed to keep. Completely devastated, a desperate scream filled the air of that place. After perfecting his power, he had been unable to accomplish the one thing that had motivated him all these years. A bolt of energy was coming straight for him. It passed through the boy's body. His chest had been pierced. There was another presence there with them. That menacing mana, it was undoubtedly from a warrior of S-rank level. The man knew that this was Bel, the one who had been banished, but the boy could not understand how he had been recognized. But that no longer mattered, because he would now join his sister in the afterlife. This was definitely the person who had taken his sister's life. Raising his blade, he was ready to end the protagonist's life, who was completely consumed by his destructive grief. But already weakened, he could do nothing. His chest was pierced even more violently. After these grim events, he found himself before the priest once more. Looking at his hands, he did not understand how he had been sent to that place. That stained glass window was familiar. He was inside his family's cathedral. The ceremony was taking place, and he was certain that he had died. If this was the ceremony, then there was only one explanation. He had returned in time. The priest instructed him to clasp his hands together and visualize his divine equipment. But the boy knew what had happened the first time. At this point in his life, he had not yet inherited Avalon and was already expecting to be banished so he could restart his journey once again. But something different happened, leaving him astonished. There was no doubt. What stood before his eyes was Avalon. He believed that this time he would do everything again. With the power he now possessed, he would be able to change fate. Now, his real life was about to begin. The boy looked at the sheath in his hands, fully aware of the potential it held. It was something so unusual that even the priest, who had never seen anything like it before, had something to say about it. Anticipating what the priest would say, he already knew. Fighting with a sheath would not be possible. As he was caught off guard, the priest said that wasn't what he had been planning to say. Even so, the boy, overflowing with confidence, assured him not to worry. That was the greatest divine weapon in existence. Now walking through the castle corridors, he was searching for his sister. If he had returned to the past, she must still be alive. His past life was still very recent, and he was deeply worried about Sarah. At last, he reached the door to her room. A girl sitting by the window heard the door open. Sarah welcomed him with a wide smile. Indeed, she was alive and well. She radiated the same beauty he remembered. Seeing her brother, whom she hadn't expected, the girl approached him to give him a hug. She also wanted to know how his ceremony had gone. The boy didn't even respond. He was just overjoyed that she was still alive. That hug was so sudden that Sarah wondered if something had happened to her brother. He still regretted not being able to save her in his previous life. The memory of that pain was still too intense for him. He would not allow his sister to go through that suffering again for now, and he could finally fulfill his promise. It didn't take long for the girl to complain about the hug. It was too tight. Even so, it was fine. She was happy to have received it. Only then did she notice something on the boy's face. Tears were streaming down his eyes, and she didn't know why. Running her hand over his head, she comforted him and told him everything would be fine because they had each other. Hearing those words warmed the boy's heart. Apparently, he had grown up in Alabama. His obnoxious brother also entered the room, noticing how well the mutts were getting along. He had been looking for Belle for some time. That was Zane, the true sadist. The little jerk said he had already heard the news. His brother had received a peculiar item during the ceremony. Apparently, the priest loved meddling in others' affairs, a true gossip. Belle confirmed that he had received his sheath. His brother couldn't hide his contempt. Laughing uncontrollably, he said his sheath wasn't a weapon, and it suited that poor soul perfectly. He would never be able to fight with that, and the two of them together were truly idiots. The protagonist had to clench his fist. He was tempted to perform an unsanctioned orthodontic procedure on the little jerk. Instead, he gave him a chance to take back his words. But the little jerk didn't understand his stance. He wasn't used to seeing his half-brother stand up for himself, so the protagonist warned him again to take back what he had said. Sensing that this was a challenge, the little jerk was filled with even more hatred. Now, he would teach the concubine's son a lesson. Unfortunately for the little jerk, the protagonist had years of intense training with his mentor. Landing a powerful strike to his stomach, he ensured the boy would reflect on his actions from now on. The poor kid only avoided vomiting his lunch because the food had already passed the point of no return. He collapsed onto the ground, curled up. Maybe he had felt the blow to his liver and his blood pressure had dropped. Looking down at the little jerk, the protagonist advised him not to threaten Sarah again, or he might be forcefully re-educated in proper manners. Frustrated, the little jerk called his half-brother a bastard. Now, he was going to take the violence to the next level. With his divine weapon, he promised to make his brother beg for forgiveness. He would scorch his skin, stating that the little jerk won in a serious fight, then so be it. He told Sarah to step back, things were about to get fun. But he reassured her first, telling her everything would be fine. He would handle this situation with ease. Preparing for battle, he summoned the mighty Avalon into his hand. Now he was armed with the mysterious sheath. His brother refused to believe he could be defeated by an object that wasn't even a weapon. After all, he was already an E-rank paladin. A bastard like him would never stand a chance. That was somewhat relevant. Paladins were divided into ranks. Everything depended on their strength. Upon receiving their divine weapon, they were automatically classified as F rank. By channeling mana into their weapon, they advanced to E rank. From D rank and above, that same mana could be used for special attacks. To surpass B rank, one had to master the unique abilities of their equipment. It was bizarre that the little jerk was bragging about being E rank. He still had a long way to go. The protagonist didn't even feel challenged by this. His overwhelming confidence only made the little jerk even more furious. Being even more provocative, he said his brother was being very cute. That was the last straw. He was going to strike the mutt with overwhelming force. Sarah became worried, certain that things could take a dangerous turn. Placing his hands on the sheath, he invoked the Sword of Light.